Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello and welcome to session 21 of Human Resource Management course. I'm your instructor, Dr. Shikha and Khera, faculty from Delhi School of Management, DTU. So students, we have been discussing various functions and policies of human resource management. We also have discussed regarding the research methods in human resources to find out how and what kind of practices should be innovated, updated, and how we can improvise upon the current scenario of HR. So today we shall be discussing on a very important topic, which is employee welfare. What kind of employee any organization looks forward to? Of course, we all believe in one thing, that our employee should be healthier, happy, productive, and should be committed towards the organization, should have intentions to remain in organization for longer duration. So how do we produce or how do we lead to a scenario where our employee is healthier, they are committed to work, and they are happy as well. They have a good work-life balance and high job satisfaction. One of the aspects to reach to this scenario is through employee welfare. So we have various acts also, that is the legislative acts pertaining to how we can give better welfare conditions to the employees, and few concepts which deal with how employee welfare can be achieved. So let us start with how we can reach to the scenario of employee welfare. So the introduction of employee welfare talks about that it is not only about the wages or about other activities like benefits and perquisites, but there are areas like health and safety of the employee, their professional development, that is imparting them training so that they are grooming themselves and upskilling themselves, recreation activities which breaks the monotony and boredom of the job, and the financial security. So when we talk about these aspects pertain to the welfare activities of the employee. What does employee welfare include? It includes health and safety aspect of the employee, how we can achieve the work-life balance in the employee's life, and financial support enhancement for better lifestyle or living for any employee, and professional development for career growth. This career growth eventually will lead to financial support to the organization. So let's first understand the purpose of employee welfare. Whenever there are welfare activities, they pertain to or they lead to improved morale and motivation of the employee. What is improved morale or motivation of the employee? He himself has higher enthusiasm, and because of which his productivity is higher. Second important purpose of having employee welfare in the organization is that we must have retained employee in organization. So that means we have lower employee turnover. With lower employee turnover, number of people leaving the organization in one financial year are less. Thus, we have retained employee who can have a sustainable contribution towards the organization working. Then we must create industrial harmony. What is industrial harmony? Any industrial setup which is free from disputes or any kind of conflicts is called as having in a harmonious state. So we can create this industrial harmony where people feel that we have been treated equal and fair, which is a part of employee welfare. Also, the purpose of having employee welfare activities is to protect the workers from various accidents, diseases, and unemployment. So, if the welfare activities in the organization are able to achieve these targets of increasing the motivation, retaining the employees, creating industrial harmony, and preventing the employees from having any accident, disease, or unemployment, we say that the welfare activities are quite effective. Second aspect with respect to employee welfare that we have to discuss is rationale for welfare schemes. Now, what do we mean by the term rationale? Rationale here means that what is the reason or logic, or you can say the basis of welfare schemes. Why should we have? So basically this answers why should we have welfare schemes. This rationale helps us understand that what all kind of schemes are also beneficial. So the first aspect here is that we express a philanthropic and paternalistic feelings towards the employees. So what are philanthropic? Philanthropic means that you are serving the society. So serving the society or serving the employees who are an integral part of the society. Paternalistic function here is that you are into a parental figure. Parental figure means someone who takes care of the other person. So employees welfare scheme should focus on philanthropic and paternalistic feelings. Second is that it wins employee loyalty. So what happens when we have welfare schemes in place? It results in that employee loyalty, or what we also call as commitment to the organization, increases. And with commitment increase in organization, his efforts also increase. And with increase in efforts, we have better productivity. So these are the benefits of having welfare schemes. Welfare schemes also combat the trade unionism. So welfare schemes reduce the kind of unrest within the trade unions in the organization. They build stable labor force. Stable here means someone who is with us, who is retained, who is sustainable, who is here in the organization for longer term. It increases productivity, as I have already mentioned it, that all the above cater to higher productivity in organization. Then with the help of these practices and with higher productivity, the effect on organization is that organization's goodwill is increased, and thus there is reduced government intervention, and there is, so what we call as, we achieve a harmony in the industrial setup with the help of these welfare practices. Then what benefits employee welfare measures give to the employees? First benefit is it improves the employees' physical and mental health. When it comes to physical health, various programs which cater to different recreational or sports activities, they give employees a platform to improve their physical strength. When it comes to mental health, when the employee feels happy, employee feels that I am getting appreciation, I am getting growth, I am getting the kind of job or work-life balance which I wanted. Thus, it improves the stress levels. Stress levels are reduced. As a result, the employee is not nervous, rather mental health is sound. Second benefit of employee welfare measures to the employees, it rises the living standard, that is their housing, education and recreational activities. It leads to stabilize workforce. We have already discussed to it, that is number of people leaving organization are now reduced. So labor force is stabilized. It improves productivity and industrial relations within the organization. So what are the industrial relations within organization? Any relationship, the professional relationship between the employee and employer, between employer and other employer, between one employee and another employee, between employer and government, and between employee and government. So all these are the industrial relations. So that means relations emerging out of industrial setup. And thus these become positive and harmonious, and productivity is higher with benefits with employee welfare measures. It reduces social evils like any kind of abuse to the workers. So these are the benefits which we can achieve with the help of welfare schemes. Now, what is the focus area of employee welfare? What are the areas on which the objectives or focus of welfare schemes pertains to? It focuses on that how the living standard of the worker can be increased. It also takes into considerations that employee satisfaction with the work condition is also very high. It takes care of that reduction in absenteeism and turnover is achieved. It recognizes human value system and thus gives them higher satisfactory life altogether. And it fosters responsibility and initiative seeking behavior. This can only be done by someone who is already a stable employee in the organization. And we have already discussed in the previous slide that who's a stable employee? Someone who has higher commitment level and has a connect to the organization, doesn't want to leave the organization. As a result, the initiative and responsibility seeking behavior of that employee also increases. He wants to take up new projects, he wants to be part of different teams, then he takes up responsibility himself. He is not to be always pushed towards the work. He is himself motivated. When someone is motivated, his responsibility and initiative taking behavior is high. Further, employee welfare schemes reduce disputes in organization, and they have, with the help of fixed policy, they can have high retained employees. Positive attitude in the employees developed towards the organizational setup. The employee starts feeling as if the organization is a family and he is an integral part of that family. He has a bigger responsibility for the growth of the organization. So that is the positive attitude that gets developed when the welfare is taken care of the employees. Then develops interpersonal and communication skills between the individuals, between various parties of industrial relations, the parties which we discussed in the previous session. It increases employees' bargaining power. Now, employees' bargaining power is that when he has to ask for anything, say for example, they want to ask for bonus, or they want to ask for crèche facility, or they want to ask for any kind of cafeteria facility. So there they have, since they are the employees who are highly retained, who are with positive attitude, who are responsibility seekers, so thus the employer also listens to them properly. And this listening power that they have created in the mind of the employer is their bargaining power. Enhanced bargaining power is then achieved. Now let's discuss something on what are the principles of welfare services. Principles means on what theories, on what factors, on what different premise, pretexts or basis the welfare schemes are devised in any organization. You also will work in some organization tomorrow, and you may also have to think of welfare schemes for the employees who are working in the organization. So as a result, the principles on which, the factors, the basis on which the welfare schemes will be formulated has to be decided. So as a result, we have different principles for welfare schemes. First is, services should satisfy real worker needs. So we should not have a paperwork shuffle. We should not make practices which can only be written down, cannot be implemented well. So services, whatever we are planning to give them as a part of the welfare scheme, must be satisfying the real workers' needs, must be on ground implementable, and must be giving some output to the workers. Adopt cafeteria approach or choice-based benefits. So what happens, students? What is a cafeteria approach or choice-based benefits? There is a menu, you can say, menu of different benefits or welfare schemes which are given to the employees, which the employer proposes, and as a result the employees can take up or pick up few benefits out of which they feel are more relevant to them. This is called as cafeteria approach. So in cafeteria we go, we have a menu card, we pick up the dishes which we want to eat. In the same manner, the welfare schemes also, or benefits, are also projected in a menu format, and the employees can pick up those schemes which they feel are more relevant and can give them better satisfaction at workplace. So this is the cafeteria approach, students, which the employees can ask for or can look forward to. Then avoid benevolent postures. Anything which can disturb the employees should be avoided altogether. Establishment of sound financial basis should be the principle for welfare service, and periodical assessment and evaluation of welfare schemes should be done. Why this periodic assessment and evaluation is necessary? Without assessment and evaluation, we cannot find whether we are going in the right direction or not. So we have to stop in between and check that whether these welfare schemes are producing the effect that we wanted them to produce. I hope you understand the effect what we are talking about here. Effect that we are talking about is that high morale of the employee has been achieved and he is more productive. He has high OCB, organizational citizenship behavior, and as a result he is more initiative seeker, etc. So basically we are talking about here is that the assessment, periodic assessment and evaluation of welfare scheme is a must phenomena that must be carried out by the organizations. Moving further, let us now talk about different welfare schemes. So by now, students, I have taught you about what are different benefits from these schemes. Then what are the principles on which these benefits or welfare schemes should be based upon when you are planning or you are formulating these schemes in the organization. What are different purposes of having these welfare schemes? Now let us talk about what are exactly the welfare schemes given to the employees which give them high motivation and morale. So you must have heard of, we all need what? We all need clear drinking water. We all need a place which is well lit, well ventilated to sit. We all need a place to have rest in between the work. Then we want certain facilities like parking facility, canteen facility, or maybe crèche facility for for our kids. So these are different welfare. These are forms of different welfare schemes which enable the employee to work with ease. Ease here means that the employee is mentally free from various different aspects and thus he can concentrate on the work. So let us see what are different welfare schemes which organizations in general provide to their employees. Amongst those schemes are the first one which is included. It is like facilities. So what are the facilities? First facility is drinking water. So the employer has to see there is safe, clean and hygienic drinking water provided at all working places, and facilities should be easily accessible to all employees. These two aspects are important because even if you have good water coolers installed at your factory premises, so we are here talking about the industrial worker primarily, since they are working on shop floor. If we talk about the white collar workers, so they have their own cabins which are installed with certain gadgets like air conditions and all, and probably they have access to the water coolers also, or they may carry water bottles, etc. with them. But in factory system, such things may not be allowed. So as a result, and also since they are working in the shop floor, there may be quite a distance to walk while they get their water cooler. So it is the responsibility of the employer or the occupier of the factory or manager or supervisor to see that the safe and clear drinking water is accessible also to them. Since they are working on machines, they cannot leave the machines just like that. They have to see and find out time in between, that what time do they have to stop the machine to go and drink water, or is it that someone else can take the charge for 1 or 2 minutes while they go and drink the water. So these things should be taken into consideration by the occupier of the factory, that such water coolers or water bodies are installed at an accessible place. Because this is very simple, small thing, but it creates a major differences. Then comes facilities for sitting. So here, suitable sitting arrangement must be provided, especially for employees who have to work standing for long hours. So if the machine work prompts an employee to have long hour shift of standing, definitely it's going to disturb their health a little bit. So as a result, it is required that we must give some proper sitting to the employees and ensure that he is prevented from fatigue. Because if he is tired today, probably he will not come tomorrow. It will lead to absenteeism. If he is tired today, he may not concentrate on work tomorrow, even if he comes. So all these things will have cascading effect on the performance of the employee. The next aspect which is covered under the welfare scheme is the first aid facility. Now, what is a first aid facility? First aid facility is the aid given to any person if any kind of accident occurs or any health issue occurs. So this first aid is generally, I am sure that you all must be also aware of, that first aid is kept in the form of a box where essential medications and essential you can say astringents or different kind of bandages are kept, so that if any accident occurs, we can give immediate and prompt help to the employee before he is taken to the hospital. So this first aid is mandatory requirement to be kept at the premises, in any industrial premises or any official premises. So employers must maintain these first aid appliances, and they must ensure that they are readily available. As I talked about the drinking water, that has to be accessible. In case of first aid facility, it has to be readily available. It should not be that you have a box, but the ingredients in the box are missing because they were used sometime and now you forgot to refill them. So that can have an embarrassing situation or maybe a disturbing situation later on. And also, we must have trained personnel in the organization, those individuals who may not be doctors or nurses, but they are trained enough to give the immediate assistance in case of any accident or injuries. With the help of first aid appliance, they can try to soothe the employee wound. The next welfare activity that we must talk about is the sanitation part. We all understand the importance of being clean, clear and hygienic individuals. So whenever we have such hygienic conditions in the place, whether it is home, whether it is office, whether it is a factory system, the result is that we have a healthier atmosphere. More hygiene we maintain, better, we are free from different kind of protozoas and microorganisms. As a result, we are free from various diseases. So this scenario has also to be taken care and maintained in the organizational setting as well, where we must give them the sanitation facilities. And what are the sanitation facilities we are talking about? We must have clean, well-lit, ventilated and hygienic place of work, and we must also take to it that the public conveniences should be provided to the employees in a proper, clean, hygienic manner. And separate facility of public convenience for men and women should be mandatorily accepted. Then, as every individual requires food to survive, so similar case with the employees also, and these employees need to have a facility where they must have canteen which serves them nutritious, hygienic and affordable food. And employees' participation in canteen management must be encouraged so that they can keep a check over whether the food is being prepared in a hygienic manner or not. So there is a statutory guideline as per the Factories Act 1948. Usually 250 or more workers if are present in a factory, then the factory system must have a canteen facility. You will be happy to know that there are many organizations, many factories which give lunch facility at a very subsidized rate of maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 rupees for different category of workers. And with this, they are very much motivated that they are getting hygienic and healthy food at their place, that too at a subsidized rate. So this welfare scheme contributes a lot to the mental satisfaction and health benefits to the employees. So when we have good canteen facilities, after that we must talk about something related to spittoons. Now we all know that the factory workers, they have a habit of chewing tobacco, and as a result they cannot gulp it, so they have to spit it. And if you have seen factory premises, majority of staircases are filled with the spit that the workers have done because they chew the tobacco. So it is better then to provide them a place for spitting, and this is called as a spittoon, where the workers can be given a facility to spit the tobacco that they chew and do not make a unhygienic environment in the official setup of the factory premises. So these spittoons are to be placed at the convenient locations in the workplaces like factories, warehouses and docks, so that the employee has a right access or quick access to spit at those locations. As a result, what we do is we maintain a clean and sanitary conditions and hygienic conditions at the place of factory system. Then comes proper lighting. Students, when you study, you also need appropriate lighting. Otherwise, it is difficult for you to read. So similarly, the organizational employees also need to have proper and adequate lighting system, which provides them better reading or better working environment, where especially it is essential for the night shift workers to prevent any kind of accidents. Light is an integral part of our life, and that should be well taken care when the workers are working inside the factory system. Since workers have to work in the shifts, so as a result they have to change their clothes also. So they need to have changing rooms and washing facility for their clothes. So such adequate washing areas like basins and bathrooms should be maintained. This will help them achieve personal hygiene, and especially they can be free from dusty and chemical based environment or chemical based. If they are working in a dusty environment or an environment where fumes are coming out and which are getting deposited on their clothes, so they can get rid of those fumes, which can be dangerous, which can pose a dangerous health hazard. So as a result, washing facility can prove to be a good welfare measure for them. Then comes changing rooms. So changing rooms must be provided for workers to change clothes before and after their shift. So adequate lockers must also be available for strong personal belongings of the individuals. So restrooms, shelter rooms are also important. Whenever they are feeling tired or they have a shift break in between, they can go to restrooms and shelter rooms and rest during the breaks. But we have to ensure that these restrooms and shelter rooms are ventilated, water supply and urinals or toilets are properly provided within the accessible limit to the employees. So we have different types of welfare activities, out of which we can say that one is intramural and the second one is extramural. What is the intramural facility? That is given within the organization. Like we talked about, the lighting, spittoons, hygienic sanitation, then restrooms, canteen facility, they were all intramural. Within the organization, these facilities were given. The extramural are outside the organization. So like you have schools, housing facility, transportation, any recreational area like parks with swings or maybe gymnasium or sports complex, or consumer cooperative stores. Also we can add here banks, hospitals. So they come under the extramural facility that we give to the employees. So welfare facilities should be in both ways, intramural as well as extramural. Both facilities are to be provided. We can also contribute and classify these into economic activity, recreational services and facilitative services. So welfare facilities, one category was whether they are inside the organization or outside the organization. So when it is inside the organization and outside, it is intramural and extramural. The second classification is whether they are economic, that is related to financial, whether they are recreational, related to their happiness, and facilitative, whether they are helping them to reach to their higher productivity, to facilitate their working pattern. So when it comes to economic welfare facilities, so they are the additional economic security over and above the wages that is given to worker. Like we have credit facilities and premium for life insurance is paid by the employer. So they are the financial benefits given to the workers. Under recreational services, you can have indoor and outdoor games and relationship building activities, which we call generally as clubs. If you go to different townships, you will see that there are kids club, or maybe elderly club or women club, or there is a club in general where people go and have some recreational facilities. Then facilitative services like canteen, restroom, lunchroom, housing, transport, medical, washing and educational facilities. So all these can be categorized into these categories. So what we have tried to convey here is that the welfare facilities can be categorized into different categories. First category is based on their presence inside or outside the organization, and the second category is based on their nature. Nature, whether it is a facilitative service, nature, whether it is a recreational service, and nature, whether it is an economic service. So now we have talked a lot about various welfare schemes also. These welfare schemes, which when are implemented in true spirit, lead to higher level of job satisfaction on the part of the employees. Let us see now how the various statutory guidelines, including the legislative laws that we have, which pertain to provide the welfare facilities to the workers. Especially we are talking about in the Indian context. So statutory provisions which concern the employee welfare includes 3 acts: the Factories Act 1948, the Maternity Benefit Act 1961, and the ESI Act 1948. These 3 acts cover different welfare schemes for the workers in the organization. We shall now devote time in understanding what are the welfare measures which are given by Factories Act, what are different welfare measures which are provided by Maternity Benefit Act, and what are different welfare measures which are provided by the ESI Act 1948. So if we talk about the Factories Act 1941, it enacted to regular working conditions in the factory, and it focuses on health, safety and welfare along with working hours of the employees. The key provisions in the Factories Act is maximum 48 hours per week for adults. So this is a key takeaway that we must remember, that the employers can employ the workers only not more than for 48 hours in a week, and they have to give a compulsory weekly off. So this is another measure in the Factories Act. No work for women between 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. That has to be taken care by the employer or the occupier of the factory, that women employees are not employed during this duration. No employment for children under the age of 14 years. And medical examination for young workers to be kept, so to be done on regular basis or during the initial employment, to see whether they are having any health conditions or they are falling into the healthy scenario. Going back to a little about history of legislation, the Factories Act 1948. So before independence, workers were illiterate, poor and unprotected. We all understand that, since during that time focus on giving or imparting education was not much. But post-independence, the focus on industrial development and worker welfare took a great momentum, and as a result, there were many labor laws which focused on worker as partner in the production, and obligation to protect workers' well-being is on the part of the occupier. So that means these legislations or these acts, labor laws, they helped to give worker their own identity in the industrial setup. And this identity was the well-being of worker has to be taken care, and they should be treated as partners in the production. This Act 1948, it went through various improvisations or updations, what we call as amendments in the Act took place. And the first Factories Act the draft was proposed in 1881, and in 1934 another update was there. Then Factories Act 1948, it aligned with different articles of the constitutions and amended primarily after Bhopal gas disaster to stress prevention. So these are various, you can say, the timelines on which the Act got evolved. And the objective of the Factories Act 1948 is to ensure safety, health and welfare of the workers to be provided. Compensation must be given to the affected person. Who are the affected person here? Affected person are the one who are facing any kind of occupational hazard, or maybe they have met any, for example, accident. Extend to factories, so it is implemented on factories, plantations, construction and hazardous occupations also. Applicability of the Act, it came into effect from 1st April 1941. There are different definitions under the Factories Act 1948. So first is definition of the worker. Here, someone who is employed directly or through any agency and is involved in any of the manufacturing process may or may not receive wages, and it includes armed forces. So those who are falling into this category will be called as the worker in an industrial establishment. Concept of employment under the Factories Act 1948, it involves the employee, employer and the contract of the service between them. The employer must have supervision and control, and supervision both what and how the work has to be done by the employer, and control on what and how the work is to be done has to be done by the employer. So here we have to understand points. First, a contract of service to be there. Supervision, employer has to take care. Control, employer has to take care. And supervision and control can be done by identifying what and how the work is being done. The definition of a factory as per the Factories Act 1948 includes that any premises where if 10 or more workers are working with the aid of power, or 20 or more workers are working without the aid of power, we call it as a factory. So I recapitulate this, students, where in a factory, if there are 10 people and they are working without the aid of power, then it is not a factory. Factory is the condition when it is fulfilled if we have minimum 10 or more with the aid of power, or minimum 20 people working without the aid of power, then it is called as a factory. It involves any kind of manufacturing process, and the exclusions in the factory system is hotels are not a factory, mines are not a factory, and railway sheds are not a factory. The Factories Act further defines the definition for the occupier. So occupier here is the person with ultimate control over the factory affair. He can be the partner or member in the firm is called as the occupier. For a company, this person is called as a director. For government factories, it can be an appointed manager. So different nomenclature depending on the different scenarios. The occupier is defined in different manner. What are different authorities under the Act? So Act gives the provision for having inspectors and chief inspectors in the factories, certifying surgeons in case of accidents, welfare officers, safety officers. Then what are different powers of the inspectors as per the Act? This inspector has powers. He can enter and inspect any factory at any time. He can examine the machinery, records and registers. He doesn't need any permission for that. He can inquire into the accidents that might have taken place, and direct premises to remain undisturbed for investigation. So these are different powers of the inspectors and chief inspectors appointed for the factories. For welfare and safety officer, there are certain preconditions. For any factory with more than 500 worker students, just remember this, for any factory where 500 or more workers work, there has to be a welfare officer. For factory with 1000 workers or any kind of hazardous activity. What can be in hazardous activity? Students, like we have tire making factories, tires which are integral part of any vehicle. So, or anything that is made out of rubber, can be a bag, can be a belt or shoe or anything of that sort. So with rubber as an input or raw material, which comes into a molten form, which is a hazardous chemical. So for such factories where the hazard is or maybe you can talk about BD making factories or pataka making factories where hazard is quite high. Thus, there has to be a safety officer, or else if the factory is not having any hazardous material with them or hazardous conditions for production, then the condition to have a safety officer is there should be 1000 or more workers, then the factory can have a safety officer with them. Then comes what are the safety measures that the factory has to take into consideration. First, they have to see that the machineries should be properly fenced. This fencing of machinery is required to protect the workers from getting any kind of injury. Second safety measure is no women or young persons should be employed near the machinery in motion. So there can be scenarios where a machinery is, say this is a machine and this machine is rotating, maybe it is rotating at this, sometimes it is rotating in this way, sometimes it is rotating in this way. So for moving machineries, no women and young person to be employed near that. Power cut-off devices in emergencies. So safety measures is that we can have emergency situations where the machine starts malfunctioning. So as a result, we must have power cut-off devices, and these power cut-off devices should be accessible also and should be maintained properly so that they are actually in use in case of any emergencies. Then comes fires, precautions and safety equipment. So we are aware of fire extinguishers. So these fire extinguishers are to be kept or placed in the factory premises at regular intervals so that if any scenario occurs, any situation occurs where we need to use them, can be used properly. Second, a mock drill of these fire extinguishers has to be maintained. With the mock drill of these fire extinguishers, what do we mean? We mean here that every employee in the organization should be focused on having a training on how fire extinguishers work. Then comes site appraisal committee. So this site appraisal committee is constituted by the state government and review proposals for new and hazardous industries. So as the term itself suggests, site appraisal committee. What can be a site appraisal committee's work? So they have to see if a new factory has given their proposal that we wish to start and establish a factory, and especially if the factory deals with any kind of hazardous material, then this committee, which is formed by the government, has to review that site, has to review that whole the proposal of that hazardous factory, and has to give a report within 90 days to find out whether that employer or the occupier or the promoters of the factory, they have taken care of all the aspects by which the hazard can be prevented, and we can be assured that we are taking full precautions as the factory owners to avoid any kind of accident to occur in the factory premises. Then comes inquiry and safety committees. So in organizations, there has to be inquiry and safety committee. Inquiry committee investigates any kind of major accident if it takes place, while the safety committee which has a representation from both worker and management. So this safety committee has members who are either workers, maybe you can say half. So if total number of members are 6, out of 6 members, 3 are from workers and 3 are from management side. This ensures cooperation in safety management. This encourages also the cooperation in the safety management, since safety is required from both perspectives, from the perspective of manager and the perspective of worker and perspective of manager. So it has blend of both the parties, and by that the cooperation is at the higher level. So we have inquiry and safety committees as well. Then comes power of inquiring and sampling. So here state government appoints competent person to inquire. An inspector can take samples for the analysis, and samples are divided into then 3 types: factory, analyst and the court. So what sample students we are talking about here? We are talking about samples of any kind of activity that has been done at the factory premises. If any accident has taken place, then sample pertaining to it. Of any misconduct has been done, sample pertaining to that. Any malfunctioning of the machine has taken place, then sample related to that can be collected. Then this sample is divided into 3 categories and is sent accordingly. So one portion of the sample is given immediately to the informed factory representative. So those who are representing the factory, the sample is given to them so that they also feel that the agency who is the competent person to inquire is doing a fair job, and they are not making any changes or bringing in any kind of forgery in the sample. They are not tempering the samples at all. Then the second portion of the sample is sent to the government analyst for analyzing the official and producing the official report regarding the sample. And the third portion is retained by the inspector for submission to the court when the report is received from the analyst for any kind of legal proceedings if required to be done later on. So you can see here, students, how a very specific standard operating procedure in order to inquire and sampling is being established under the Factories Act, where we have to send the sample for analysis to 3 parties, to factory, to the government analyst and to the court, and try to do justice with any kind of mishappening that has taken place. Now, there are certain penalties also in general for those occupiers who do not abide by the measures which are written in the Factories Act. So if those provisions are not implemented, then for violating it, the imprisonment is up to for 2 years and fine is up to for 1 lakh. And for repeat violation, 1,000 per day. In case due to accident, any worker dies or injuries there, then fine up to 25,000 or maybe 5,000, depends on the scenario. Some enhanced and specific penalties are, even after you have been told and you have been convicted and you have given the fine also, you have maybe undergone the imprisonment also, but still the occupier is not changing himself and again he is repeating the same thing, violating the provisions. Then after the previous conviction, now the enhancement of penalty is the 3-year imprisonment and fine up to 2 lakh rupees. Hazardous violation, 7 years imprisonment, fine up to 2 lakh rupees, and false certification imprisonment up to 2 months. So these are the penalties as per the Act. Certain presumptions and limitations is that person found on factory premises is presumed to be the employed individual. So the occupier has to take into consideration that they do not let any other individual who is not authorized to enter into the factory premises. Now, in case of any normal offense, complaint has to be launched within the 3 months of that act that has taken place. And if someone has disobeyed the written orders, then 6 months, within the 6 months, the complaint has to be launched from the written orders when they were issued. The conditions for welfare of workers is, as we have discussed, workers should be given washing, drying and sitting facilities. There has to be a first aid box for 1 per 150 workers. So if you have 150 workers, 1 first aid box has to be there. If any factory has 250 workers, canteen facility to be given. If 150 workers are there, then restrooms to be provided. For any factory having 30 or more women working there, then a crèche facility to be given to the women worker, where she can get the benefit of keeping her children who are toddlers or who are at a very young age and can be kept nearby, so that the woman who is working in the factory can look after and go in between to check the well-being of the child. Then provisions related to employment under different categories. Employment of women is work allowed only between 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. No work between 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. And equal employment opportunity regardless of the gender to be given to both the genders. And employment of young persons, the provision is no child below the age of 14 years to be employed. Certificate of fitness required for the adolescents when they join the job. Maximum 4.5 hours per day for children to be given as their job, that is those who are from 14 to 18 years. Female child work allowed only between 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. The obligation and rights of the worker: obligations are avoid misuse of safety appliances. So training has to be given to all the workers with respect to the different appliances or gadgets which are to be used in the organization, in the factory or machines. So obligation is that workers should not be doing any act by which the appliances are misused or safety of appliances disturbed. Also prevent endangering self or others. So one has to not fall into any kind of act where they are endangering their life or others' life. That is the obligation on the part of the workers. They ought to follow these rules. Then rights on the part of the worker includes access safety information for any machinery or place they are working. They should have the access to safety bulletin or the information so that they can be well prepared before they go into working into that machinery. Then comes training and representation rights. So in case they want to represent any of the scenario they are uncomfortable with, they have a representation right. They can represent their issue or concern to the authorities, and proper training must be given to the workers. Training, we are talking about here, training of the machinery where they have to work. So the Factories Act is, it ensures workers' welfare, safety and fair conditions, promotes measures for social justice, and it strengthens the industrial relations and productivity. Now we shall move on to the Maternity Benefit Act, students, where protecting working women before and after their childbirth. So it ensures that there is a legal right to maternity leave provided of 12 weeks of paid maternity leave to the women workers. So which is basically 6 weeks before and 6 weeks after the delivery they can utilize it. The provision of the Maternity Benefit Act say that the women worker will have their job security during the time they are on the maternity leave. So employer cannot dismiss or discharge a woman during the maternity leave. Inclusions and coverage is that it implies, the Maternity Benefit Act applies to factories, mines, plantation and performance establishments, and ensures a wide protection of working women across the industries. Legal enforcement, and there are penalties if this provision is not followed. So inspectors are appointed to ensure the compliance of the Maternity Benefit Act 61, that the women worker are being provided with the maternity leave. And also the penalties, the employer faces penalties like imprisonment and fine if they violate this rule. Protection from hazardous work for the women who are in a family way. So pregnant women cannot be assigned arduous work or long-standing hours because it may lead to any kind of miscarriage or health complications. So in order to avoid that, to prevent that, they are prevented to work from hazardous conditions. Additional leave benefit is given. Leave for miscarriage is 6 weeks with wages, and leave for illness arising out of pregnancy is 1 month. So these are different provisions, students, which are given to any women who is in family way, so that the childbirth is easy and her health is also not affected. Then medical bonus and nursing breaks are to be given. So if employer doesn't provide free care, then in that case medical bonus to be given, and 2 nursing breaks daily until the child is 15 months to be provided to the women. The act, that is the the Maternity Act 1961, applies to different establishments and plantation, factories and mines. Legal enforcement and penalties are ensured by the occupier. Then we move on to, so students, what we have discussed in the Maternity Benefit Act 1961, we have talked about various provisions which deal with how we can give a comfortable environment to those working women who are in a family way, so that their family can be started in a very healthy and positive note. And the inspectors ensure that these provisions are properly implemented, and if not implemented, there are due punishments for violations like fines and imprisonment is also there. So as a manager, you have to understand that you have to take care of the working women who are there in the factory premises, that they are in a safe environment to work. Then comes the ESI Act, the third statutory law which deals with the provisions for welfare measures. So it is enacted to provide social security and health insurance to the employees. As we are talking about, it is administered by an organization called as Employee State Insurance Corporation. So ESIC takes care of all the provisions of health insurance for the workers. So it applies to factories and specific establishment. Here, the employees are protected against financial distress caused by sickness, maternity, injury or death. So for those who are under the ESI Act, for them 1961 Maternity Act is not implemented. Because in those women workers who are covered under ESI Act, they are covered for their maternity benefits as well. So it ensures the social security and welfare of the workers and their dependents. The applicability of fact is where the establishment has 10 or more employees. Wage limit is they are earning up to 21,000 per month, and it extends to shops, hotels, cinemas, road transport, etc. So if any worker has a salary less than 21,000 or up to 21,000 and there are 10 or more people working, their ESI Act is implemented. ESIC Corporation works through various different organizations like hospitals, dispensaries, clinics across the India, and they have also tie-up with various private hospitals. They have mobile medical units and they have attached medical colleges for training as well. So with the help of these, they provide the health insurance and treatment to the employees. Various importance of ESI Act includes that it protects workers from any kind of financial risks during their illness, provides social security and welfare, that is, if they are ill, the government will take care of their expenses, or the occupier and government together will take care of expenses. It encourages employee loyalty and retention and reduces the burden on public health system, also supports industrial peace and productivity. Any employee who is happy, healthy is highly productive employee. So the key definitions here is that any person employed for wages in connection to work is the employer. Person with ultimate control over establishment is the employer. Any person employed for wages in connection with work is an employee, while the person who has control over establishment is an employer. And all cash payments including DA, HRA is called as a wage, which excludes overtime and bonus. Now, duties of employer is that they have to register the employee with the corporation and they have to deduct and deposit a contribution on time. What contribution? Contribution here is that the employer contributes 3.25% of wages and employee contributes 0.75% of wages, and the total of 4% of wages is contributed in ESI Act. The benefits are given in terms of medical care to the person and their dependents. Sickness benefit is given up to 70% of wages. Duration is up to 91 days in a year, and the contribution period is 78 days in 6 months to qualify. Further, the maternity benefit is paid leave for female employee for 26 weeks for first 2 children and 12 weeks thereafter. 100% of wages is given during the maternity benefit. Then you have disability benefit. If the temporary disablement, then 90% of wages, permanent disablement, then lifelong monthly pension. Dependents benefit in case of death due to employment injury, a monthly pension is given to the dependent. So the conclusion of employee welfare in the Act is promotion of workers' health and safety, legal obligation for employers, improves productivity, encourages gender equality, and it is a foundation for modern labor reforms. So students, I have got few questions. Quickly, let's reflect on that. What is the present contribution rate of employee towards ESI scheme amendment? Just now I told you. I'm sure you all will be able to answer it. Let us see. So the answer here is 0.75% of the wages. Which organization administers ESI Act? I'm sure you know this is ESIC Corporation. According to Factories Act, a factory means any premises where, yes, you guessed it right, it's 10 or more workers with the aid of power, or 20 or more without the aid of power. Who is responsible for ensuring compliance with provision of Factories Act? Yes, he is the occupier. Which of the following welfare provision is not specifically mentioned under the Factories Act? You guessed it right, it is pension funds. So we have talked a lot about different welfare provisions pertaining especially to the Factories Act 1948, ESI Act and the Maternity Benefit Act 1961. With all these acts focusing towards welfare of employees in general, focusing on women and children at large, talking about various penalties and violations, and giving that platform of welfare measures so that an employee is highly positive, job satisfaction oriented, and has a high OCB altogether to contribute with a high morale, which leads to high productivity. So this is all with respect to employee welfare, students. This is the bibliography that I have referred to for this particular course. You can also see and dig into more industrial relation concepts and labor law concepts. This is all from my side with respect to employee welfare. I hope you have understood the content and must have enjoyed the quiz in the end. Thank you very much.